There I was, on a shuttle to clowning Fat Cap 25, only 23 years old, and a newly minted security guard. Having had no idea what was going on the space station, I decided I would make finding out my top priority. Part of me had hoped to see some action. As I lit my cigar though, I had some doubts. Something was definitely in the air, I remembered thinking. Stepping off the shuttle, I noticed the security office directly in front of me. I indeed had to fuck with the security console inside. Once I finally logged in, I scrolled down to the only arrest warrant on the ship and deleted it. All in a day's work here at Sec. Fuck! I left my fucking key card in the fucking thing, god. Making my way to the Sec wing, I noticed how dirty the ship was. Was this really the standard of quality to expect on the great clowning Fat Camp in its 25th iteration? Something was definitely going on. Once I finally reached the Sec wing, I noticed this little goober trying to break in. So I asked him what the problem was, to which he replied asking what was going on. Thinking nothing of it, I told him I didn't know because I just showed up and I was a newbie. That was my first mistake. Everyone was acting decently shifty, but it wasn't till I asked what was up with the roaches in the prison cells that everyone gave me a stare before the Sec guard left. What was everyone trying to hide? I had no clue. So I went inside and made my way to the med bay looking to see if I could mess with something, when suddenly, there he was again. Duke fucking Moon. I confronted him, and I asked him why he was in the back of Sec. He said he was just checking it out. Upon further examination, I realized he was simply a cargo technician that had no access back here, but I decided to be nice and let him off with a warning. That was my second mistake. Suddenly, I found myself handcuffed. He began to strip me, running me for every last foam I held dear to my chest, and even exposing me in the nude. He stayed silent. I knew what I had to do. I began jimmying myself out of the handcuffs. I was surprised he couldn't see my flaccid penis turning rock hard at the thought of raining retribution on his ass. I reminded him he wouldn't get very far if investigated, as my name was all over the equipment. He still never responded. I readied myself and eyed the axe on the floor, and once I was finally free, I picked it up. For some reason though, I kept fumbling it, and he picked up the stun baton. It was now or never. Life or fucking death. I began beating him like a quadriplegic able to jerk off again, and the dumbass dropped his stun baton. Finally. I rained unholy hell on him. Once I was finished, I began to search around for my clothes when I found them. They were on him. But before I grabbed it, the fucker began crawling around. Never leave a heart beating, I remembered my instructor say. I beat the ever-loving shit out of him once more, penis in full view of cameras. After I brutally bashed his brains in for being the overgrown cockroach he was, I was finally able to recover my security jumpsuit and start the process of really figuring out what the fuck was going on this ship. Until, of course, a fellow Sec partner ran in. I was pretty sure I was done for until I remembered that police brutality is not something that Sec disapproves of. In fact, we relish in it. After a short conversation, they eventually left, so I did the only thing I knew how to do to further disrespect Mr. Duke Moon. I attempted to throw his body out of the airlock. It didn't work because I was impatient with it and I didn't want to risk getting too close to the outside door and sucking myself off. It's not as pleasurable as it sounds, trust me. So instead, I ditched his ass in the dark airlock space and began to limp my way to find a medbay with a doctor in it. I decided to arm myself and head out, confident that I may be able to make it to the other end of the space station. That was until I noticed the crackhead sprawling around inside of Sec with a shotgun, and knowing how injured I already was, I wasn't going to take that chance. I completely bitched out and ran back to the safety of the room I previously gored Mr. Duke Moon. Except he followed me in and attempted to get into the back room. In a panic, I cracked him, still dropping the axe because I wasn't two-handing it. This is what I get for not fucking reading. Thankfully, I was able to get around the corner without being killed. He couldn't escape, and he had only one way to go. I reached into my bag for a weapon when I realized it wasn't my bag, it was Duke's, and there was now a pistol inside. Duke's murder would come to be the best thing to happen for me, as now I could defend myself against the mindless mongoloid literally 5 steps away. The pistol must have scared him off because he ran the complete opposite direction. Thankful, I began to Cupid shuffle the fuck out of there to find a medbay as quick as humanly possible. I made a quick pit stop at the bar because I had hoped the bartender would be able to tell me exactly what in God's name was going on, but it was empty. So, I helped myself to a quick bite of someone else's burger and a couple of sips of someone else's green beer without paying. After all, what were they gonna do, invoke the law? I am the law, motherfucker. I limped my way to the med bay, and though no humans seemed to want to help me, a friendly medical robot tended to my wounds. I ran my ass back to the bar and saw that it was full, and I demanded to know what the fuck was going on. Heretics and pirates. My recommendation? Drink, the bartender slurred. Giant worm and pirates, the guy next to me said. Then he placed down an SMG. I picked it up and thanked him, not really believing that the giant worm was a legitimate threat. Holy fucking shit! Instinctually, I popped off a couple rounds. It did absolutely jack shit. The worm hadn't been focused on fucking any of us up directly. It had busted through an airlock that was closing off a tear in the station and sucking all the oxygen out. Slowly, I was choked of oxygen as everyone else was smart enough to grab their masks. I didn't have one because Duke was already wearing his earlier, and I had his bag not thinking twice that I would ever need oxygen. It was my third fatal mistake. Was this the heretic's plan all along? Was Duke a heretic prepared for the eventual suffocation event? I began rushing down away from the area back towards medbay. The medical bot could tell something was wrong, but his AI was a little too retarded to notice the opening in front of him, so there he sat. Each step became harder and heavier. I painstakingly tried to get into the radiology wing, but the doors wouldn't budge. For good reason too, it would depressurize the entire wing itself. I limped to the corridor next to it. Maybe somebody would be kind enough to let me in if I could just... Was this... it? A long time later, I woke up in the medical wing, confused as hell, but thankful. The man in front of me, Mirko No Job, asked if I had any internals, to which I replied no. Eventually, I collapsed again, but he had forced internals on me and woke my ass back up, even giving me nanobots that could heal me when directed to. This station was hopeless, and it was time to get the fuck off and wait for evac. I desperately needed a weapon as I lost the SMG from earlier, so I went back to the bar. Thankfully, Taylor Cross, the man from earlier that loaned it to me, actually picked it up for me, and the bartender even offered me his laser gun. Armed and ready, I made my way back to the corridor to go to evac and defend anyone that needed to get off this station. But the damage had already been done. On my way there, I had failed to notice the completely exposed tile and the low pressure warning. I limped towards the corridor, determined to fend off heretics and pirates and even the gigantic worm itself. But something was very, very wrong. I'm still a bit unsure of what happened, but this is the moment shit hit the fan. Fire was coming out of the drains and the temperature was picking up. The station was fully fucked up beyond all repair at this point. I knew at that moment there was no possible way to make it to evac. I turned around and hightailed it back to the bar to at least warn Taylor and the bartender to get the fuck out with an escape pod or something, but when I got back it was just the alcoholic moth bartender fixing his last drink. I hopped over the bar hoping to follow him out. I knew there was a chance that getting behind these doors would save me, but the pressure was low on the other side too. I had one last shot. Send myself down the trash chute and get to cargo bay. I didn't have enough time to tell the bartender to send me down. He passed out on the floor of the bar, probably because his dumbass drank way too much. I hope that final cocktail was worth it, fuckface. I engaged the chute and hopped in, but my timing was too off. Inside the trash chute, I grew way too weak. I crawled out and began to crawl towards the door, but I didn't have access for some fucking reason. Me, the resident security guard on the ship, didn't have access to civilian service doors for some fucking reason. I began to slap the door with any strength I had left, but there was no way it was gonna budge. The door hauntingly echoed its deny tone, and I slowly crawled away from it. I could feel the heat growing. With one last thrust of energy, I attempted to climb back over the bar. Maybe someone would see me if I could just get over there. But I was spent. Slowly but surely, the darkness grew until I began to see the light. And even though I was laying on the floor of a dingy, disgusting bar, feeling like I was cooking in an oven and realizing just how pointless my entire role on this dumbass fucking space station was, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself that this is how it would end. Not when I was fighting Duke, not when I took shots at the giant worm, no. This is how it ends. I took comfort in it and accepted it. Nothing mattered aboard Clown Fat Camp 25, and that was okay. I drew my last breath and sailed away. But do you want to know what the kicker is? The fucking bartender got out!